Think for a moment of all the evaluation reports you've read and perhaps prepared over the years. Now imagine all those hundreds of pages and thousands of words condensed into a single picture that not only says it all, but also says it better. Introducing EvaluVision, an effective, efficient, sustainable, and innovative method for maximizing the use of evaluation through visual thinking. EvaluVision developed from the idea that vision is by far our most dominant sense, taking up half of our brain resources. This means that we learn and remember best through images, not words. Using visual thinking, EvaluVision turns complex information into concrete material that is easy to understand and to share. It is an inclusive and thorough approach to the process of evaluation. Led by a graphic facilitator in a workshop setting, EvaluVision creates a safe and culturally sensitive environment that encourages all stakeholders to participate. It poses powerful questions that ignite robust brainstorming sessions and produce richer feedback. It captures all the aspects of a program in one image so that participants see the big picture and make the connections. By incorporating newer practices, EvaluVision provides the opportunity to learn from the past as well as the future. As a result, it encourages participation at various levels, from national policymakers to community members. As a tool for internal communication, EvaluVision brings project and management staff together. It improves the quality of the evaluation submitted to donors. Finally, because of its plain language and clear visuals, EvaluVision expands community engagement and allows beneficiaries to receive the best possible service. Discover EvaluVision today and bring your evaluation to the next level tomorrow.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for coming and joining us to this gLOCAL 2021 event, Picturing Evaluation, How Visual Thinking Can Improve Facilitation and Use. My name is Keisuke, and I am a graphic facilitator and will moderate today's session. Before I proceed, I would like to ask you a little bit about your backgrounds, how you're related to the evaluation or graphics or none or all. So Nicola, can you please split the poll? And there's a simple mini polls. You an evaluator, development practitioner, graphic visualization expert, communication specialist, a combination on above, or the other. I will give you 10, 15 seconds more so that people, I think there's about more than 50 people joining here today. So, 40, great. So let's, last minute, 3, 2, 1. So can you close the poll and show the result? Right. So it seems development practitioner is 35% of you and 28% is evaluator and 20% in combination of above. Okay, so there's not so much of graphic visualization expert or communication. It's really about evaluation community, which is great. That's why the older gLOCAL 2021 is about, and that's why we're here for. Excellent. So let me explain a little bit about today's session. Let me switch my camera. Do you see my screen? Okay. Today, we start with the introduction of evaluation by Yumiko at WFP. And then we have two special panelists. Alok from DMEO in India, and Catherine, she's also a graphic designer and expert in evaluation. So we're going to hear from them at the last part is a plenary discussion and idea sharing. So we want to make it more interactive and participatory. And the chat box is open. So if you have any questions, please type it up so the presenter can address it when it comes to the end or the middle of the presentation as they like. Okay, so without further ado, may I invite Yumiko for the introduction of the EvaluVision, please.
Thank you, Keisuke. So hello, everyone. My name is Yumiko Kanemitsu. I'm a regional evaluation officer for WFP Asian Pacific. So I'm based in Bangkok, Thailand. So I'd like to ask you how many emails, phone calls, text message, and social media you received yesterday. We are living in the times of information overload. So the fact are 1.8 million scientific research papers published each year, and BBC and the New York Times published over 10,000 articles last week, and over 3 million blog posts were published yesterday. And over 41% people rely on friends to discover and share contents, and contents will increase by 500% in 5 years. These are the facts before the COVID. So we definitely have more and after the COVID. So the problems are huge volumes of new information is being constantly created, and pressure to create and compete in information provision, which leads to the quantity over quality and affecting many industries. And as a result, we so much data that you leave the users confused and unable to make a decision. So this is one of the reasons why the, evaluations are underutilized. So WFP created a method called EvaluVision to avoid information overload and introduce future and design thinking and encouraging dialogues and including various stakeholders in evaluations. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk about the overview of evaluation facilitation and visual thinking, and share some studies, cases in Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and India, and then share some lessons learned. Next slide, please. Yes, so the problems of the evaluations. So we produce many evaluations report, and but how much are we actually digesting the information in this information overloaded world? We typically produce a report like 50 to 60 pages with annexes, and very text heavy and very detailed and technical. And the language often used in UN languages, mainly English, and communities, people in the communities are informed. They provide information, but it's rare to read the report, and it's rare for us to provide the community feedback. So it's even difficult for our partners, even the government counterpartners, to understand the evaluation report. So next slide, please. So we are combining the evaluation facilitation and visual thinking. So the crossover area between the evaluation facilitation and visual thinking is in EvaluVision. So next slide, please. So we used a technique, so the evaluation facilitation. So evaluation facilitation is specialized niche within the large world of facilitation. Evaluation facilitation applies the general facilitation knowledge and techniques to specialize and challenges of working with stakeholders in the evaluation process. The purpose is to enhance the relevance and credibility and meaningfulness and utility. So according to the microclimate pattern, it is an opportunity to hear different voices and encounter diverse perspectives on evaluation facilitation, and bring in more evaluative thinking and facilitate and generate a lesson learned, a shared understanding, and find group solutions. Graphic facilitation is a relationship with the stakeholders is more involved, because in not only the capturing the key content visually during the event, but graphic facilitator also working with us to design and process the facilitator workshop and make sure our next steps is clearer. So it's also we can communicate with affected population with this method. Next slide, please. So this is a picture. So we took in the workshops. It was face-to-face workshop. And then next slide, please. So visual thinking. So visual thinking is a way to organize your thoughts, improve your ability to think and communicate. It's a great way to convey complex and potentially confusing information. So various tools such as drawings and infographics and data visualization, photos and videos. But the point is we're not using this only at the end product to communicate the report, but we use it for process management and consultation to create shared understanding and finding solutions together with stakeholders. So next slide, please. So this is some examples of visualization methods, handwriting, infographics, and data visualization. And then next slide, please. So benefit of EvaluVision are engagement and collaboration, big pictures, and providing solution focus and communication. So we keep this process and quite simple, things quite simple. The less information you present, it's actually easier to understand. And keep it relevant. Information is actually meets the user's needs. It's less likely to overwhelm. And keep it clearer. Simplicity and relevance are good, but information needs clarity to be effective. And provide supporting information. If the users need more information, make sure it's easy to access for them. And provide balanced information. We should present both sides of the coin, so negative and the positive findings, rather than just one findings. And make it clear what is to be done with the information, what action should users take, what should they take, why should they take it? And make it easier for the users to take an action. If they need to complete a task, then make it accessible and make it obvious. Next slide, please. So there are 3 elements in the EvaluVision. Visual thinking validation workshops typically takes 2 sessions, one at the community level and the other one at the national level. We emphasize the community feedback on the evaluation findings with the people in the communities. And at the same time, bridge the communication gap between the provincials and national level. The overall purpose of this approach is to provide a space to talk with the help of presentation and graphic summary in the process, and stakeholder understand and discuss and validate key evaluation findings. They also identify the prioritized next steps, and which then feed into the management response. The community level workshop gathers beneficiaries and subnational government and officials, local partners, and project staff. We explain the key evaluation findings in the local language with the support of the visual tools and participatory dialogue. Our workshop facilitators also invite the direct feedback from the participant. And graphic summaries and the video recording then bring to the voices of community into national workshop. And at the national level, policymakers and partners, donors, and WFP start to discuss the next steps in terms of priorities and importance and the feasibilities. Next slide. Cases of EvaluVision. So we conducted the about 6 EvaluVision workshops in Laos, Bangladesh, 2 times in Bangladesh, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, in India. We also use this method in evaluation training too. So Laos, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Sri Lanka was about evaluation validation. And in Bangladesh, we use it for evaluation validation as well as the design thinking and planning. And India, we use it for national evaluation capacity building for the government of India. So all videos are actually available on YouTube, which we can share the links later. Next slide. So Sri Lanka, this is about the project of the climate change in Sri Lanka. And we use it as the validation. So we conducted 6th November and online, and government, WFP, and UN agencies, implementation partners joined it. We use the framework of microclimate patterns utility focused evaluation, share basic findings and interpretation and judgment, interpretation of positive and negative, and the recommendations. And typical validation questions are what actually worked and what did not work in your perspective to stimulate the conversations. And the recommendation we draft together with a SMART, so specific, measurable, and attainable, realistic time-bound recommendations, and with the future thinking, with a plan with the next cycle, and share the responsibilities with the government and the partners in the management response. That leads to the second project plan, and as well as the bigger corporate country programs and the country program evaluations. And we use it as a community feedback. Next slide, please. This is the some examples. So the picture shows the evaluation findings, and the card post-it shows the opinions of various peoples. And we encourage and stimulate the dialogue and validate the findings and try to build a consensus among us. Next slide, please. This is Bangladesh. It's about emergency multi-sector Rohingya crisis response. This is planning. So we use it April, May 2020, it's planning. And there's COVID started, so remote work and started also. Logical framework is available, but the team needs to discuss to share the same understanding of the log frame. So we help to develop the TOC, theory of change. So especially we needed clarity what resilience actually in this context means, and how to fill the gap between the activities and outcomes. Next slide, please. So when I look at this picture, I still remember what we have discussed. And particularly, we discussed what actually resilience means in this project context, and we break it down the economics and the interpretation with economics and the social stability and the environment and the governance. And we systematic approach to identify, assessing, reducing the risk of disaster, and it aims to reduce socioeconomic vulnerabilities to disaster, as well as dealing with the environment and other hazards. Next slide, please. So this is Bangladesh, a school feeding evaluation, project evaluations we conducted in Bangladesh in November 2019. So it was face-to-face workshops. We conducted 2 workshops, one with the central government and the second one with the provincial government, with the implementation partners, parents, teachers association, and mothers. It'll be quite interesting to implement this with the children next time. So this is some pictures in the workshop. Oh, excuse me. And then next slide, please. The case, this is India. So we use it for the national evaluation capacity building for India. We conducted a workshop in the December 2020, capacity building initiatives, DMEO, NITI Iron in India. So National Institution for the Transforming India, NITI Iron is a public policy think tank of the government of India. So that Mr. Mishra is our partners, and WFP is closely working with NITI, and WFP and NITI have been working on monitoring evaluation guidance, national evaluation policies, training, and producing joint studies and evaluations, and organizing lesson learned seminars as part of national evaluation capacity development. And in this workshop, we discuss EvaluVision techniques that can be used for cross-evaluation cycle, and especially to facilitate discussions, evaluation findings conducted by the government of India. So I'd like, next slide, please. So we'd like to share some lessons learned. So many organizations are actually struggling to produce a quality management response. So EvaluVision can be a solution. And evaluation conclusions actually requires synthesis, and lesson learned requires generalization, and recommendation requires more future and design thinking, especially COVID time. We work on the management response in the evaluation validation stage. So we don't wait until the evaluation is completed. We work on management response at the validation stage, and using the opportunity for drafting the recommendation and the management response together with the stakeholders to create a shared responsibility in the core space and for dialogue. And then also planning, online visual workshop proves to be effective and communication, saving time and engage in a dialogue and building consensus. And follow-up actions use and develop theory change and graphic image throughout the program cycle. So system thinking to comprehend the system and big picture, and we understand relationship between the sectors and activities and stakeholders. And also important thing is the dialogue. So participants were quite passive in the beginning in the evaluation management process. We shared the report, but there was no comment, but inviting them to the visual thinking workshop, they became active. For instance, they did not want to take negative findings in the beginning, but we had a dialogue to turn them into lesson learned and improvement for the next project phase. So we can also create new ideas and a new try, and it can be also used for internal communication, help to communicate with senior management and the other sectors, and also external communication with the donors and partners. Next slide, please. So we're building EvaluVision community practice, sharing the examples, EvaluVision, evaluation, and graphic facilitation associations like this, and also sharing the resources. We developed many toolkits, so we're sharing the toolkits, and then also matching the graphic facilitators and evaluators. We like to work with the more national graphic facilitators. And next slide, please. This is the picture of the EvaluVision guidance, which is available on website, and we can share the links later. And next to, and also this guidance. Next slide, please. Okay. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you very much, Yumiko. And I see on the chats that there's a few big boxes during the PowerPoint, and I did see that too. And after 1 year working in Zoom and COVID, we still face some technical glitches, so our apologies. But the PowerPoint presentation can be, one question was, can we have the copy of the presentation? And yes, I suppose. Yumiko, is it possible to send it already on the chat here, or should we upload it to somewhere else? What do you think?
I have to ask Nicola.
Organizer Nicola, who work all hard work and behind backstage, and or Richard. What is the best way to share the PowerPoint?
Yes, we will share a link with the participants. We can make perhaps after the session we can share a hyperlink with all materials. Excellent,
thank you. And also I posted the link to the toolkit, the guidebook that Yumiko was talking about at the very end. So if you see at 6:18 p.m., that is the time that Richard posted the link to the publication, and also a link to the LinkedIn group Catherine posted at 6:21. So if you're interested, please check that out. And a few questions to Yumiko. Would be interested in example used with local groups, community, especially where words might not work so well. Choosing symbol to capture meaning could make for a really interesting process. And there's another question. Screen cover. Who did those? Or who is in charge of the graphic designers course? This is fantastic way to presenting data. And the other one is, we'd love to hear from your views and experiences during the Q&A. Oh, that's Richard. And yeah, that's it on the chat. Yumiko, can you take those questions, please?
Okay, so local is the one we did in the Laos. We did in the local communities and the farmers, and it was very successful. For instance, women with the local government, normally they don't speak in front of the authorities, but we really encouraged, so then women, farmers really gave their opinions. And that was a really successful moment for us. And then also graphic course, I think I have to give that the floor to Keisuke about more graphic course. I mean, we would like to do more, but this is what we're developing now. So maybe Keisuke can share the graphic.
But the course for us in charge, who is in charge of the course, that is for our work, the regional office is the one who is with hiring me, for example, those EvaluVision that I did and drew, that come from the regional office. And we try to find out a way to localize it. And to be frank, the designer or facilitator, the prices are from like very different, like very top level that I want to reach one day, or like that very early starter, like just off the college, but very good at drawing. So they have so many different level of the graphic designers and illustrators as well. So it really depends what is the context and how much or how serious you want to be this. And any other questions? Okay, so do you have any guidelines for how much or how little complexity should be present in a graphic? Yumiko, do you have any?
Right. So I think for this method, we need a lot of preparation in advance. You don't wait until the end. So everything's, it becomes a bit more proactive. So for instance, management responses at the validation, you don't wait. And also when you're working on the programs, evaluation, you started to think, what will be the key point? And then you have to select the simplicity. As I said, simplicity and clarity is important. So you have to build what will be the key message. That's you have to create with the evaluation managers and the stakeholders. So, yeah.
Yeah. And if I could add a little bit on top of that, complexity can be very complex, but you also have to know who are the audience for that. If it's very simple way for the community, the graphic can be very simple. But if you're talking about board of directors, they don't like simplified drawing. It's too childish. So you have to add quite a lot of text on top of the graphics. So knowing who the target is defines the level of the drawings and how much the complexity goes filter into the drawing. Another question, have you come across a situation where words can be more nuanced than a picture? Because some words can be multiple meanings and carry a certain social context, slang words, etc.
We're trying to make it culturally sensitive. And for instance, Keisuke goes to the workshop and contact with people much earlier in advance. And then he's picking up the more culturally sensitive pictures as well. Do you have anything to add in your practice?
I think that's I think you can, power of the drawing is actually feel the atmosphere. So the good graphic facilitator can actually draw something that is not being spoken. So that is the power of visualized thinking as well. So yeah, it's combination of text and the drawing is the best solution in my mind. Excellent. So I think that's it for now. If you have other questions, we have Q&A at the end as well. So please keep typing. And otherwise, may I move on to Alok Mishra for your experience. Yumiko briefly talked about how we work together and
right. So, okay, thanks a lot, Keisuke. Thanks, Yumiko. I'm Alok Mishra. I'm working as Deputy Director General in the Development Monitoring and Evaluation Office in Government of India, which is the Apex Monitoring Office in India. My basic assertion is that if evaluation has to be institutionalized in developing countries at individual, institutional, and ecosystem level, embedding visual thinking along the whole evaluation chain, value chain, can be a great strategy to enhance development outcomes. Let me slightly expand upon this idea. You have to realize that in developing countries like India, evaluation capacities have remained very fragmented and quite low. Moreover, the approach has been more or less top-down driven, and this is one point which was emphasized by Yumiko also. So evaluation, if they are carried out, with all their focus on qualitative and quantitative methodologies, samplings, and statistical analysis, they remain a very esoteric subject, right? A preserve of a few and not understood by many. Visual thinking simplifies these reports to easily, understood sort of field, which people find it very useful. And especially, I mean, this was emphasized by Yumiko also. And now, the second point is that going forward, slightly taking it forward, I mean, in a democratic setup like India, with its national, subnational, and even local governments going down to people's assembly, which you call Gram Sabha, makes it possible for the messages of what works and what doesn't work, impact of program, to be communicated to people at the lowest rung. And what it allows is it allows for bottom-up approaches. So evaluation, which has remained more of a top-down approach, the visual thinking, which is facilitative nature, allows for that bottom-up approach, and which is very sort of strong sort of incentive for increasing the improving the outcomes of these programs. Secondly, we don't realize probably that unless visual evaluation findings are used to close the policy cycle, the 360-degree policy cycle, will continue to have suboptimal developmental outcomes. And it is here that communication plays a big role. The job of communication is not only to make people understand, but also to make them act on it. It is here that all this long, winding, heavily worded evaluation reports fail. So visual thinking again serves that purpose. The third thing, in a country as diverse as India, where you have scores of languages, dialects, crossing more than 1,500, visual language is something that transcends low literacy levels, in villages, and also the education and the language barriers. So that way, the visual thinking becomes more amenable to communicating with sort of the masses at the ground level. One more thing that I'll say is that visual thinking allows for individual interpretation of communication in their own context, and which is a very powerful tool, because text makes you think on a particular line. Let me come to one more idea, which which is quite sort of I think very strongly about. Bureaucracies rarely like evaluation reports, especially in a system where in so many countries where the policies evolve less based on evidence, but more on not ad hocism, but more on personal experiences, which are not always substantiated. And therefore, what happens is that the policy and program managers tend to identify with programs very closely. And as a result, what it means is that they are less willing to take criticism or a critical view. I think visual thinking through its facilitative and dialogue-based nature, makes evaluation a learning process, which is less threatening. And therefore, visual thinking in such context, becomes a very sort of powerful tool. We are quite fortunate in in this country that a number of forces are now coming together. We have an institution which is development monitoring and development monitoring and evaluation office, which has come up. We have had program evaluation office, but which faded away slowly. We are moving away from input-led approaches to outcome-based approaches. The finance ministry in this country has already mandated that evaluation of any program has to be precondition for its continuation. Last year, we carried out evaluation of 125 centrally sponsored schemes of federal government, which were very large. The next challenge that lies is that how do you embed it in, embed it into the evaluation cycle? And what we are doing is that we are already sort of beginning to have sort of some kind of evaluation planning, that the studies that we are planning to carry out, quick evaluation studies and rigorous evaluation studies. So that would be the first stage that where we'll start embedding it. The second more critical area is the capacity building area. And what we have done is that, what recently the government of India has done, that it has come up with a big capacity building efforts for all the government sort of, officers, staff, at all levels of the government. And what they're trying to do is that they are trying to build a competency framework, right? So, so all the roles, activities, and the competencies are going to be sort of, linked together. And then each role or each post is going to be assigned those competencies. And these competencies are then going to be aligned to the knowledge inputs or to the curriculum. For M&E, DMO is working on this idea. And we would be then, working with, administrative training institutions and universities to come up with these courses. And visual thinking, we propose, would be, one of the important components. We have, some of the states will also be going, because it's a federal state and states are not bound to sort of, they have their own areas of sort of, where they have all the freedom. And we would be seeking, we'll be having a very strategic approach in reaching across to the provinces to again embed sort of, visual thinking slowly, and then take it forward. So broadly, that's the whole space in which we are working. We do see problems, but we are committed to sort of, take it forward. We think that visual thinking is a very powerful tool in countries like India. Thank you, Yumiko. Thank you, Kesuke.
Thank you very much, Alok. Well, I think there's just so many good questions are coming. How about let me go to chat at the moment and at the end, and you can read through some of the questions as well, and we can get back to it at the very end. So
absolutely,
we can, if it's okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. Agree.
That's great. Thanks, Alok and Keisuke. Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine, and I'm so excited to be here with you today. Thanks all so much for joining. Before I share a little bit about myself and some resources and communities that might be of interest to you, we wanted to run a quick poll to hear from you once more about the visual practices that you're using in your evaluation work. So Nicola, if you wouldn't mind sharing the poll, and oh, here it comes. So if you could take a moment to add your responses to these two questions, we'd really appreciate hearing from you. Great. Maybe a few more seconds to fill in your responses. And Nicola, if you could broadcast the results, please. Great. So our question was, which of the following visual techniques have you applied in your evaluation work in the past? And not surprisingly, it looks like most folks have used data visualization and infographics. None have yet to use EvaluVision. I hope that will change after this call. Some have used visual note-taking or graphic recording, none for animations, and a handful for visual collaborative platforms or visual facilitation exercises. Interesting. We have one other question, is that right, Nicola? Or will we be doing that now? In which case, would you mind launching that one as well? Thank you. So we'd love to hear from you now of what you're most curious to learn more about. I saw some questions in the chat about training, so we'd love to hear from you now about what curiosities you have so we can make the best use of our remaining time together. A few more seconds. And Nicola, when you're ready, please share the results. Great. So it looks like folks are interested in training on graphic recording, training on integrating visual practices into the evaluation cycle, more examples of visual practices in evaluation, and evidence to support that these visual practices improve evaluation digestion and use. Fantastic. Thanks, everybody. And so with that, I'll take a moment just to briefly introduce myself. My name is Catherine Howe, and I work as an organizational learning specialist. I'm very passionate about using words and art to help people connect, communicate, and collaborate more effectively. I mostly work in the international development sector. It sounds like many of you, or the majority of you, do as well. And I'm also an evaluator, so it's great to be amongst folks who have similar orientations. And I have worked with organizations like the USAID Learning Lab, as well as the Global Knowledge Initiative. And I'm really passionate and excited about helping teams and individuals to learn and improve their work together from the evaluation data that they collect and the learning that they undertake in their work. Next slide, please. And so with our remaining time before we open up for Q&A, I just wanted to share some resources and communities that may be of interest to you. So first and foremost, there's a free visual note-taking 101 handbook on my website that I'll share a little bit about with you in a moment and how to get there. This is a really good starter kit for anybody who's interested in exploring your doodling practice. And secondly, I offer a range of visual note-taking trainings. In a moment, I'll share some highlights from the 101 training with some tips that you can try immediately. I also offer a visual note-taking training specifically for evaluators of how to integrate visual thinking practices into the evaluation cycle. So if you're interested in that, I'll share in a moment how you can find out more about those training opportunities. Otherwise, we also dropped into the chat earlier today. We've made an EvaluVision LinkedIn group and hoping that this will develop into a community of practice where we can share tips and tricks and techniques that we've used with employing the EvaluVision techniques. So please join us in that group. Somebody had asked a question about software. If you aren't able to hire a graphic facilitator or you just want to get started with some software, I would highly recommend kicking off with the Concepts app. This is a free doodling platform that you can try out. If you're interested in creating an animated video, you might also take a look at Procreate if you're not familiar with that platform. And then I would otherwise highly recommend Canva. This is a great platform for creating infographics, and you can create a free account, and it's very user-friendly. In the case that you are interested in employing more visual techniques, but maybe not so much on the doodling side or don't have the resources to hire a graphic facilitator. And then last but not least, to an earlier question about cost, and I think somebody else had another question about hiring. If you're interested in hiring a graphic facilitator, particularly somebody who's based locally or who speaks a specific language or who has expertise in something that is relevant to your event or your topic, you can go to, there's an international forum for visual practitioners. The website is ifvp.org. And you can find there's a map with all graphic facilitators. Casey and I are on there. You can find us on the map. And that way you can look around and kind of see for your cost and also your location and different styles and techniques to find a little bit more of what you're looking for. Next slide, please. Thank you. Great, so this is just a quick screenshot of my website. You can see if you go to catherinehowe.com at the very top, you can download my free visual note-taking 101 handbook. And you can also check out here for more details about upcoming trainings that may be of interest. Next slide, please. And so before we break for Q&A, I just wanted to give you a sneak peek into some of those materials so you get a sense of what would be covered in a training or in this handbook. And so in most visual note-taking or graphic recording trainings, they cover 4 foundational skills of visual note-taking, which are active listening, lettering, which includes font and lettering, improving your lettering for readability, organizing content, so putting it in the containers that you see on the screen, and last but not least, drawing. And so something that you can do with the handbook or with just finding things that are inspiring to you online is just to start by copying different fonts and containers that you like as an entry point into doodling when you're in your meetings, especially long Zoom meetings as we all are on many today. Next slide, please. For folks who have ever said, I can't draw, I'm a terrible drawer, I'm not an artist, I'd like to offer something that I found really mind-blowing, which is the visual alphabet. And with these 12 symbols that you see on the screen, you can draw anything around you. I'll ask Nicola if you could go to the next slide, please. In the training, we basically take some time to start drawing common objects that we see or that we reference a lot in our work. And so you can even try now, if you have a piece of paper around you, to start drawing some of the icons that you see on the screen. I think you'll all be pleasantly surprised that you can draw a lot better than you thought when you break it down to the visual alphabet. Next slide, please. And then last but not least, we'll cover how to draw people. Next slide, Nicola. The most important thing with drawing people is to be able to draw movement and emotion. We also cover in the training how to represent diversity in your stick figures and characters. I also have a blog about this on my website if you're interested to learn more about that. Next slide, please. And then last but not least, we pull all of these together into a visual library. This is an evaluation visual library that I created. It's also in that handbook. It's basically icons that I find myself using a lot in my work as an evaluator. And this is really helpful to an earlier question about breaking down some of the nuance in thinking about multiple ways that you might visually represent something, and then combining the word with that icon can be really powerful. This also makes it a lot easier than when you're in the moment to call quickly to mind icons that you already know how to draw. So you develop that muscle memory. And next slide. This is another example of some icons from the visual library. And next slide, please, just a thank you. And close and open now to questions. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Kat. There's one specific, let's take one specific question to Kat. Your work is this kind of question for you. How have you gone about obtaining feedback in the way, continue to learn, improve, and improve this quality of your work?
Yeah, that's a great question, and thank you very much. Something that I like to do ahead of time before I go to the digital format is to do a lot of sketching. I wonder if this is a similar process that you use, Case K. But I really like that to offer multiple visuals of what something could look like, and then share that with the folks that I'm working with and ask them to weigh in on, like, oh, we like option 2, but actually, can we move the text down to the bottom right, or can we change, where the icons are? I really like that collaborative process so that it feels more co-created rather than something that I just take away and then develop. So I usually do a couple of rounds of sketching. So most of the visuals that you see that I create are the benefit of multiple minds, not just my own weighing in on them. And I think that's what makes them really great. I think similarly, something that I've done too is when I'm doing live graphic recording is dropping that visual into, for example, a mural board, like some sort of collaborative platform, and then asking participants to put Post-it notes on top of the visual with their feedback, like, oh, it would be great if this quote was here, or actually we would want this to be phrased differently, or can you add this as well? And so just creating multiple opportunities for feedback at the front end, and then also during the live graphic recording, I feel makes it much better. And otherwise, I'm just open to hearing which visuals folks really liked or that stuck with them and why, and understanding a bit more and more how our brains interpret visual information and what sticks with people. What would you add to that, Case K?
Feedbacks. I think drawing, people tend to be hard on yourselves. You say, oh, this is awful, like I cannot draw. So just, I try to tell myself, I am hard myself as well. So I try, oh, it was good. And try to find what went well. So that helped me to learn. And on the point of Mr. Alok, Vijay shared a link to a blog of Evalu Partners, Evidence Matters, and that's the latest blog of Yumiko and Alok, who wrote extensively exactly what Mr. Alok was talking about, and a very precise, concise matter coming with the video. So that was, anything to add, Alok, this one?
No, that's great. Just that, embedding visual thinking is going to take sort of much longer time. And we'll have to be very have a lot of perseverance, persistence to push for this process. And how we institutionalize, much more important would be that how do we create, master trainers? How do we get master trainers? And then those master trainers can be used to train other trainers. And that way the scaling up, takes place much faster, rather than waiting for years. So that would be the critical key, that how do we get master trainers to train trainers, and who in turn are able to to train others. Because that understanding has to permeate through different levels of bureaucracy. More so, before it goes to even people, because bureaucracy has to sort of accept it, adopt it, and then sort of use it, show that how good it is, and that be quite a critical thing.
Thank you. Yeah, the persistence. I completely agree that it's not one day that everybody become visual literate and stuff.
Yes.
Thank you. And other questions I have seen is somehow can't cover them unless there's other question. Okay. This is another question. Is there any analysis on which age group resonate more with visual thinkings? That I don't know. Anyone has there or any? No, sorry, we can't answer. Please Google. If you find out, please let us know.
There's one thing I wanted to add to the animations question from Tanya. Just to share that as a reference, there was an animation video that I created for the everyday peace indicators approach. It's a peace building measurement approach that some folks might be familiar with. I think my sense from creating that animation video is that I'm not sure how much it was intended to be for local communities, given that it's very text heavy still in the animation and full of icons, but I think that could be a very helpful approach. So just to say that's an example of what that could look like, but I'd be really curious, Yumiko, Alok, or Keisuke, if you've heard of other animations that have been used to connect with local communities more, if anybody from the audience has some experience or examples of that.
Yumiko, any experience or any?
I have seen the animations on the evaluation findings and summaries in the video on YouTube, but not particularly on communicating with the communities. So we can actually try. This is community, but communicating with people in the community, we need much more improvement. So we can try many things, and but it's quite challenging now because of the COVID travel restrictions. But our next step is that we will communicate that we have it in Sri Lanka's graphics with communities. So we can try various methods. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Excellent. There's a question for Mr. Alok. Sorry. Moving policy cycle, which is a space one could prioritize to include visual thinking tool, especially in the government M&E setup. If you prioritize, where do you focus on, Alok? Oh, sorry. Alok, there's a question for you.
Oh,
right.
Looks like you're on mute, sorry.
Yeah, that's right. No, Keisuke, could you just sort of repeat it? How do I embed?
Fast moving policy cycle, which is a space one could prioritize to include visual thinking. And you mentioned a whole value chain, but what about where would you prioritize?
Okay, so it depends on which is the sort of place you're looking for. If I look at states in India like Kerala, where the grassroots institutions are very strong, probably even in the policy where the policy making is a bottom up approach process, you could start embedding something like visual thinking from the policy making level, right? But where the policy making is not a sort of a bottom up approach, probably getting it as part of evaluation would be a nice beginning, because evaluation brings in the whole space of policy making together in that one drawing. And probably I would think that that is very useful, because policy making remains subjected to not only classical policy analysis, but there's politics and process of policy making also, and that complicates the policy choices that the governments or the countries make. But evaluation that way is a slightly more sort of clearly laid out process, and converting it into visual thinking would be much easier. So broadly, what I'm saying is that wherever the grassroots institutions are strong, whichever place, and where the bottom-up policy making process is in place, I think visual thinking can be embedded there at the policy making level. But wherever it is not strong, probably we can start with the evaluation, because that brings together the whole policy space. And from a top level to the bottom level, it can be explained to everybody.
Very good. Very interesting point. The capacity assessment is really key for that, and embedding the visual thinking. Great. And unfortunately, we have very limited time left. So let me allow myself to share a summary visual that I captured today's conversation. I simply made today's subtitle, Visual Thinking Can Improve Facilitation and Use. And for evaluation value chain that Alok was talking about, and the training and capacity buildings, and it all comes down to somehow act on it, the basis of the evaluations. And yeah, and also interesting to know that infographics and the data visualization was more used, but not so much on the illustration and also the facilitation. So hopefully this conversation will continue. And this is the second year for EvaluVision to present the activities, and I hope to continue for the next coming years, and community will grow. And any final words from panelists, Yumiko, Alok, Kat? Just a few conclusions, please.
Yes, Yumiko?
You're muted.
Yes. Yeah, I hope the session is interesting for everyone, and join us in the community and try something innovative in an evaluation to make it more interesting. Thank you.
Okay, what I see is that, well, this is a really powerful tool. And, what I see is that if, EvaluVision is to be able to build sort of, embedded, it will require, a kind of building those knowledge resources, online resources, which can really sort of take it a long way in terms of institutionalizing, building capacity, that will, for visual thinking. So basically creating that cost-effective knowledge resources, online resources like MOOC, they'll go a long way in building up capacity in this important area.
Thank you. Okay.
I'll just say thank you so much for being here. I feel like we've just scratched the surface on a really interesting and exciting topic. So thanks for joining us, and really looking forward to continuing the conversation. Please join us in the EvaluVision community of practice, and look forward to continuing to connect with you there. Over to you, Keisuke and Nicola.
Thank you. I believe that Nicola will send you all the summary of the links and to the blog, publication, video, and presentation. And that's where our contacts are there as well. So thank you very much, everybody, for great discussion and conversation, and looking for more of it in the future. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks everyone.
As a ritual, can you unmute everybody, all the participants, and just say thank you or goodbye in your own language? You are the mother of farewell.
Thank you.
Au revoir.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Bye bye.
ありがとうございました。
Shukriya.